See the links.
Yeah. What's up, guys? This is the second installment of the Retro Roundtable podcast. It is the same five idiots as last time. Me, Bob from RetroRGB. Up next, we got Nick.
Hey, I'm Nick, one half of HD Retrovision, the cheerleading half.
I guess, am I the other half? I want to be a cheerleader too. I can pull it off. I'm Steve Kulov, H from HD Retrovision.
Hey, I'm Nick.
Renee?
Voultar.
Zach.
Oh, me?
Oh.
I'm Voultar. I'm the champion of live and defender of all the women in this chat with us today.
And I'm Renee from DB Electronics, the entirety of DB Electronics, is what you're staring at.
Both halves. All right, so do we want to go around like we did last time and tell people what we've been working on? Something quick, something interesting?
Yeah, why don't you start us out?
Sure. I actually kind of ran with something that somebody in our YouTube channel had posted as a comment. Took it in a little different direction, but he had mentioned something about using Raspberry Pi for some things, and we decided to give it a shot as far as building a portable 240p tester using a Raspberry Pi. So that's kind of what I've been working on lately. Got it to the point where it cycles through some 240p and 288p modes. You can really have it do a whole bunch of things. And the way it works right now is it kind of loads up a new screen resolution and then flashes an object on and off every frame, so that while you're testing to see if that resolution even comes through, you can see how the TV processes it. So you'll know if it's misinterpreting it as 480i and trying to deinterlace it, and what kind of deinterlacing it might be doing. You can try to track all those things down. So I've been using that. Works pretty well on my 4K TV. At some point, would like to release the source code, but there's some things that need to get hammered out first. The primary of which is that it runs really hot. So thank God that we ordered the Cana kit, or Cana kit, I don't know how you pronounce that, but came with heat sinks. So it gets kind of toasty. So I'm looking into ways to resolve that. And Steve had some ideas. It just still working through it. So yeah, that's about it.
Is that component 240p?
Oh, right. Yeah. So I should mention it's the way it's built now is actually 240p out of the HDMI port. And then you can slap a jumper across two of the I/O pins, and it'll switch over to use the composite video output. So you can use that as an analog tester and just throw it into the Y jack on your component.
Cool.
All right. How about you, Bob? Anything interesting?
Oh God, I've been working on so much shit. I guess the one thing that I've been trying to do for a long time and keep getting sidetracked is I do like messing with the Genesis 3, but the documentation on it isn't great. So one of the things I wanted to do was just quickly add back Master System support. And I have the picture up here. You could see I kind of marked off pin 43. The problem is, on a lot of the forums, the people have referred to them by VA1 and VA2 motherboards, but a lot of the motherboards don't have the versions printed. We really need to be going by the Sega chip numbers. So maybe I'm reading the forums wrong or something, but the 315-5960 chip, which is actually used in a bunch of things, if it's missing Master System support, you could just connect pin 43 to pin 30 of the cartridge slot, and it'll re-enable Master System support. So I'm gonna keep looking into that, and I'm trying to get documentation because the documentation online is very spread out. So I'm trying to get everything for all the different Sega chips, so that anybody that wants to do any of these mods can just follow the pinout and just do it.
That's
Yeah,
cool. It's a big problem with a lot of these things is that you're kind of relying on a whole bunch of different websites that all may have different things, and you don't know who to trust. And to have that all centralized would be pretty nice.
Yeah.
I had the same problem with that VA1, VA2 thing. Me and Voultar were cracking open Genesis 3s, and is this the VA1? There's no markings on it. Yeah.
Right.
All right, how about you, Zach? Been doing anything cool?
Other than myself.
Yeah.
A
Oh,
couple-
you.
I know. A couple of things. I've been starting the preliminary process of getting Neo Geo AES and MVS RGB boards up and going. It's very early in that process, but other than that, I am working on to better streamline my stock and inventory so that it's more readily available. And I've just finished board revisions, the final board revisions for the SNES, N64, and the PC Engine Duo RGB board. I just finished debugging that one a little bit in a TurboGrafx 16 to make sure everything was okay, and it was very sexual and beautiful. So that's what I've been doing with my body. Sexually, of course.
So no inventory problems. They'll always be available at all times, right?
Well, they're not. I mean, they're there when they're there, and when they're not, they're not. It's that simple, Bob. So,
You're first, motherfucker. You're first.
but that's
Shots
it.
fired already.
Shots fired.
Have you gotten an MVS yet?
Come again.
Have you gotten an MVS yet?
I'm picking up I am getting right now an MV1FS. The is it the MV1F? I think it's the MV1F. It's the bigger monster, and the MV1C that's supposed to be the really good revision, but it doesn't have stereo audio out. So I've got two revisions that are coming in for the MVS stuff. But Jesus Christ, there's like 1,000 MVS mainboard revisions. So it's going to be difficult to make a all-in-one board. Well, it might not be difficult, but it's going to be hard to test because of all the hardware differences to make sure it's fine and seamless across the board for all those things.
Yeah.
Gotta believe.
You got to believe.
All right, Steve. How about you?
Well, one thing I was kind of investigating was some of our customers with the cables have been sending us these links to this eBay auction that sells a TurboGrafx/PC Engine thing that's kind of like Renee's DB Electronics graphics booster. And
Whoa,
so
kind of like.
It's from
That's
a distance.
trademarked.
it's like the same form factor, but that's the only thing that it's similar to it. Yeah, I had to get this thing, so I bought it to look at it, and the first thing that I thought was just an error on the picture on the listing was that the caps were backwards. No, the caps are backwards. So I mean, it's probably not high voltage enough for it to be dangerous, but I can't say that for sure. But it does affect the video quality. So this thing's garbage. And while I was on there, I saw these other hilarious composite video things, and there was one that I just had to get, and it came wrapped in electrical tape, and I could actually choose my color of electrical tape. That was a feature at the auction. And oh man, there's no like tape on it right now, but this.
Well, what color did you choose?
I went white.
Yeah.
You know.
Racist.
Yeah. So like this piece of metal, which is the shielding, is just a piece of bent metal that goes over this nonsense, and the guy kind of Tetrised these pins together to form the right amount and electrical tape this thing, and Actually, the best part about this was
The auction listing, right?
the auction listing was so it was really long, and I just assumed that it was just like terms because that's what they usually are. And Nick is like, "Have you read the auction listing?" And I start reading it, and the guy starts ranting about all the other people selling things like this on eBay, about how you don't need to make sure that it's not shorting together. He was like going on the rant, and my favorite thing was his customer reviews.
Oh, that was the best
one
part.
at the top, the one at the top, which he put as a positive review to show off, was, "I got this thing in, didn't fit, but with a little bit of trimming, it works okay." Oh man.
I like the one where he said a guy had a PC Engine. He says, and the review was, he said, "I have a PC Engine and this thing works great, bit pins and all." I thought that was hilarious.
It's like, I wonder if this guy is doing this on purpose to see if people will still buy this piece of crap, despite like these obviously bad reviews that he's listing as good reviews. Like, I mean, how could he not? Either that, or he just doesn't speak English well. That's the only thing I could think of, and he's not understanding the people's points.
Right. Yeah. Jeez.
I mean, yeah, it kind of brings in like a bigger point that we could probably discuss like another podcast about stuff being sold on eBay it's obviously not production ready, and people don't do research into it. The design is kind of meh, but yeah, this is actually another one I bought. It actually has a nice case to it. It actually fits pretty well, but I thought there was going to be circuitry inside, and there's just caps and glue. But I mean, these are expensive because the official turbo booster is what, like $140? So people can get away selling these for like $50-$40.
That's
So
insane. $50 for that.
Something to watch out for, I guess.
Back to the knockoff of Renee's board. Do you want to like talk to people about kind of what could happen with caps being put on backwards, for instance? Like what dangers could there possibly be, assuming that the voltage got high enough?
I mean, the caps would pop.
Right.
It's beyond its. I mean, it's weird. It's weird to predict what happens when you hook up electrolytic caps backwards. There's a lot of different things, but the main concern I would have is that it's not designed right, and you get poor quality out of it. And that's just a red flag, basically. Like, don't
they can't do that right. What else are they screwing up, basically?
There is an LED though, which is fun. Renee,
damn it, mine doesn't have an LED.
But who knows? That could catch on fire too.
Yeah, is the LED backwards?
That was the only thing not backwards.
So the LED is always on, but when you plug the thing in, that's when it goes off.
When you turn off the system, it turns on.
Yeah.
Is there a big electrolytic coupling cap on the power supply too? Is
Power
that on backwards?
supply. You. Of course not.
Well, if the fluid in the electrodes, if they're inverted and the electro fluid starts to boil, then the thing will conduct. It'll start conducting and then it'll short. So it can either blow up or it can just short.
Yeah, I guess
after a period of time.
You could ruin your console. If,
yeah.
Yeah, that's my main point. Like you could ruin your console with stuff that isn't designed properly.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the TurboGrafx, but I know the PC Engines have a soldered-on fuse that's in line with the power supply. So if you short the power supply externally, that fuse is going to blow, and it's really hard to access. It's under a heatsink and whatnot, so it'd be like it's an advanced repair job if you blow the fuse in a PC Engine.
So it's like a chip fuse?
No, it's not a chip fuse. It's just it's a leaded fuse that's soldered onto the board, and then there's a heatsink on top of it, and it's a pain in the ass to reach.
Yeah, that's again, like poor design, and I guess this guy has newer boards out too, which we kind of looked at, but I didn't buy it. I already wasted so much money on junk just to warn everyone else.
Cool. All right, Renee. So.
Yeah, my update. I'm gonna do a follow up on what I talked about last time. Is I was raving about my PC Engine connectors that I had found from a seller in China. So my board came in for my modless region converter, and I finished testing everything today, and it works perfectly. So the design of this board, I mean, the intent of this board really is to put Zach out of business. I want to prevent all modders from doing work nowadays. But just a quick overview is that you can take either a Japanese game or a US game and put it in the other region's console, and it'll play your game. It's as simple as that, right? There's no mod required. You don't have to flip your data bus. This board takes care of absolutely everything for it. And now that there's a real HuCard connector on it, it's even more reliable than my first revision, which was selling like almost 2 years ago. So the only thing that's left now is I'm going to design a small 3D printed shroud to cover the electronics, make it look sexy, and then we'll start selling it.
Hey, Renee, remember you said you give me one once it's ready? Remember that?
Yeah, sure.
When do you think you'd have those up on your store? Like, are we talking like a couple months or?
Probably a couple of months, yeah, because I mean it takes about 4 weeks to get these PCBs in, and I want to get the 3D printing done right on here, and I want to get everything assembled in China, right, so I can keep the cost down. So I'm gonna get a few quotes and whatnot.
Sure.
I would say, yeah, a couple of months, and I'll start selling these. I have 10 right now, which I'm probably gonna, now I have to give one to Steve, but so I have 9. But
You promised it to me.
All right,
Cool.
I think we had questions from last week, right?
Yeah, so people left some questions on the YouTube channel. There was quite a number of them. I don't think we'll be able to hit them all. I mean, if people want to do that again for on this week's, the only thing I ask is to actually make them a question. There were a few that were just like talk about this topic, and we have such a backlog of topics that I don't think we'll be able to like accommodate like any long form topics that people were suggesting necessarily. I mean, maybe, but the ones that are like specific questions are good. So the first one I wanted to answer was, is there a scientific argument to be made for the proper order of operations when hooking a console up to a TV, such as like should you be connecting the AV cables to a display before you connect the AC power? Does anyone have any thoughts on that one?
I thought about that a little bit. It's mostly not relevant, but if I had to, in general, if I was hooking up equipment and for some reason that would be an issue, I would probably hook up power last. I don't know.
Is there a case to make for that? Like, why would that be your?
I just would like, in case something is on. So there was an example where we had two TVs set up at the test bench, and the one TV was off and the other TV was on, and I was getting noise, and I found out it was because there was noise coming from the power supply of this converter box that was going through the shield of the HDMI, and because I had a Y splitter of component going to both TVs, even though the other TV was off, it was still traveling through the ground and into the ground in my other display. So in that case, if I was hooking stuff up to my TV and making sure that my cable box or satellite was working, and then I started plugging power into stuff, I would have saw
the change immediately. Yeah.
I would have known that there was an issue.
But in general, for your end user, this is probably not a big deal. It's kind of the answer to that question. But I thought it was worth answering people because, I mean, as a kid, I used to think that like if you took a cartridge out of a console before you powered it off, like you could actually cause some damage. Like That was like a serious concern of mine.
I
But,
still wouldn't do that. You don't
Yeah.
I have my 2 cents to give on that, right? Is newer equipment, I know like my PS3 is using the IEC C13 or C14 plug, I forget which one it is. It has the ground on it, right? So your console is grounded through the power cable, but older consoles don't use ground, right? They just use neutral and hot. So their only path to your real ground that's going back to your electrical panel is probably through their hookups on the TV, assuming those hookups are actually grounded to ground in the TV.
Yeah,
That's
a
a
lot
good
of
point.
newer stuff uses isolated power supplies completely with no earth ground
So even in your
connection.
PS3, you're saying?
Oh, I know. Does the PS3 have an earth ground?
No, well,
I
the
don't
plug
know.
does, right? It's using the same
Oh,
plug
okay.
as the computer. So
Okay, yeah.
I'm just comparing that to older consoles that don't even have the ground on the console.
I don't believe the Slim does, though. I don't think the PS3 Slim has an isolation ground. I think it's just the
2-prong cable.
But
Right, 'cause
I'm
that's the
saying
only
that
difference I can think of is that the only true path to ground you're getting is through the television. So.
well, I mean,
Oh!
I was saying that the television nowadays doesn't even. They usually use isolated power, so there's no
Okay,
earth
that's what
ground.
you're saying too.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So yeah,
But for an
that's
older CRT, those have to be grounded, right? Because of the
Right.
step-up voltage. Yeah.
and another reason why I would hook up power last is you don't know if like the power switch is off or on sometimes. Sometimes I actually leave it on and then I'm going to plug something in and it shoots on and I didn't realize it and I like put a cartridge in while it was on. I didn't see the light because it was faced away from me. That's how my test bench is set up. I don't know.
right.
And the small SNES has no LED unless you mod it, so it's hard to know if something is already on.
I wonder if there would be an exceptional case or a case to be made for is it the Atari 5200 where the power supply is integrated into the RF modulator?
Yeah, I have one sitting right here.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's the only sort of
Special case.
exceptional case I can think of. And I don't know why I just thought of that, but I'm pretty sure the 5200. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that thing, the power goes into this, and then this goes into the TV. So that's craziness. I just haven't. I got the new Sophia RGB kit in, and I haven't installed it yet. And one of the main reasons is because I want to do the power mod, so I don't have to use this piece of crap.
Nice. Cool. Let's see. The other questions. Let's see. Has 3D printing made any impact on retro gaming? Might be a question for Renee.
Hell yeah, definitely.
For me, it has definitely. But just what I was talking about before, right? A lot of people are wary about using some of my products because they don't come in cases. And I mean, generally, I'm going to say my stuff isn't really sensitive to any ESD, but people have fears, legitimate or not, and you want to address that. And because of 3D printing, I can cheaply produce a small shroud that's going to go on top of my product. And on my webpage, I've given out designs for Genesis Shell that have the cutout for my FM power base and power base converters. So it's allowing me to give out a lot of stuff, hoping that other people can 3D print and exploit that as well.
Yeah, I was really hoping that by 2017, everybody would just have a 3D printer sitting on their desk and we'd all be printing our own tools and pretty much everything by now. But I guess that kind of market has not grown as fast as I expected it to, I suppose. But
Well, what are you guys waiting for? I have one.
yeah.
It's definitely growing. I'm starting to get non-nerd friends who are buying them for different things. I had a friend that bought one because he had custom guitar picks that were like $40 for 5 or something because he needed them this special way. So he actually bought a 3D printer and he 3D prints his guitar picks because he wants them some crazy way, and it ends up saving him money at the end. So.
Oh, there you go. But I mean, I think that there are more people other than Renee that I'm aware of that in this industry too that use 3D printing to at least iterate on a prototype of a design I've seen. So yeah, I mean, I think I think it's an important tool that maybe helps move these projects along a little faster.
There's also a lot of retro projects use laser cutting of acrylic. I've seen. So that's another. It's similar. Like if you go to a hackerspace or a makerspace, they have 3D printers, they have laser cutters, they have CNC routers. It's very accessible nowadays. All that type of technology. So it's gonna. More retro projects are gonna start using this stuff.
Oh yeah, and I'll just say you can get a reasonably accurate 3D printer for under $1,000. So it's really no excuse nowadays, unless you don't have $1,000.
Somebody said, Waffle Sports in the chat said, home 3D printing is low res though. 3D models have more jaggies than a PS1 game. What do you think about that, Renee?
Well, you get what you pay for, right? I have my 3D printer will do 0.1 millimeter in Z and 0.4 in X or Y, right? So you have to work around those dimensions. You can increase your Z in 0.05 millimeter increments. Not sure what that is in imperial for you Americans, but 3D printing is done in metric, just like the rest of the world, right? Zing. Okay, sorry.
Disgust me.
But you can select.
You damn globalists.
You can select your accuracy in Z, and that's the additive printing, right? More expensive 3D printing that uses the powder, the cured powder, the SLS, is obviously higher accuracy. You don't always need that though. Even when I do a print, I'll select my Z accuracy depending on how fast I want it to print and how accurate I need this to be. Like if I'm printing like a small figure for my daughters, I'm not going to use high accuracy because I don't need it there. So
you're a terrible father.
It depends what you're going to do, right? Even my hue cards that I made, I should have talked about that. Even the hue cards that I made come out at 0.2 millimeter, and they're just fine.
So when you say that you could get a sub $1,000 3D printer, that would be sufficient for like any design that you post on your website for people to use.
Yeah, you can see the resolution of the printer in the print, right? That you're not going to get like a silky smooth surface. It's not going to look anything like an ABS mold, right? You have to realize that.
Right.
You're always going to see the layering. That's the reality of home 3D printing, right?
But it could be a lot better looking with just a little bit of sanding afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Or a chemical process too, right?
Yeah.
There's
sand and paint.
Acetone.
Acetone will work on ABS, I think. I mostly print PLA, so I'm not sure what kind of solvent you could use to smooth it out. You do lose some detail when you do that, though, because you're effectively melting it a bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's do one or two more questions. This one might be a good one for either me or Steve to answer, which is, once a new home brewer has something cool, what should they do next? You have any thoughts on that?
Just put it in the closet and make something else.
Don't share it with anyone.
Don't pursue your dreams.
Yeah.
I don't know. Nick, you answer it.
If your dream is to sell it, make a product out of it, or even potentially a company, I think there's a couple ways to do it. Some people have the opinion that you should be taking it to the forums and getting the blessing of people there first.
What?
We didn't do that with ours. We just, opened up a website and threw up some pictures, and somehow people found out about us through various means.
We formed an LLC, got a company bank account, got...
Sure, that's if you're going
to... Yeah, but that's if you really want to make it a big deal. I mean, I think if somebody has a product that they just want to make a small amount of, I think it's extremely important to go to, like, OSH Park, have a circuit board printed, solder, maybe 5 together yourself, test them, contact friends. Or if you don't have friends that have the console you're looking for, forums would be a good help for that. You just have to sift through the trolls and assholes that love to just bash everything. But the one good thing is if you post on the forums like, hey, I need an Atari 7800 with this serial number between this and this serial number, you'll find people online that would be willing to help. So
Yeah.
and you'll even find a lot of people that if you send them it, they'll install it and test it, and help out. And as long as you do a little bit of research, you're not just sending a free product. You're sending it to somebody who can give positive feedback and suggestions and stuff. Generally speaking, the retro gaming community is pretty awesome about that. You have a few people that'll steal the product and run with it, a bunch of trolls, but I mean, it's much less than in like a car forum or something,
Sure.
Yeah, and another option I would throw out there for like just starting super small is there's all these hacker spaces popping up everywhere, and there's a lot of people there who have built stuff and made projects, and they could be an invaluable source of advice and help to get to the next step, to get to a prototype phase, to get to like a small production phase, and there's a bunch of tools there you could use if you're a member or stuff like that. I would Google hackerspace, and there's like some lookup utility that you can do to see if there's one in your area. Most major cities have at least one. I know in Chicago there's like 2 or 3. But yeah, that's a good tool for starting small.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one super valuable thing you can do, and may cost you $15, is just go buy a domain for yourself and start curating some pictures or whatever content of whatever you're making in a centralized place, so that you can just say, here, go take a look at this. This is like everything I have so far. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It doesn't take that much effort to throw something together for where you can just hand people a link. It's kind of a nice way to share things around.
Yeah, in different countries there's different rules, but I know for a fact in the US, if I wanted to, I can go and get a domain and then go to my bank, and even though it's still a personal account, just get a separate account, which I'll just make that my product account, go sign up for a PayPal, and now for like under $50 you have a good way to start a mini business. So if you sell 5, 50, 500, doesn't really matter. You have everything nice and neat. When tax time comes, you have all that documentation right there because you don't mix it in with your personal accounts, which sounds a little bit like accountant speak. I just, it's tax season, so that's probably why it's the forefront of my mind.
It makes it super
super
valuable, man,
yeah,
to do that.
Totally.
All that legwork is well worth it in the end. But I mean, that's of course assuming that you're going to go down the route of selling whatever. But at least as a starter, you should just get your stuff out there and put it in a place that anyone can find pretty easily. All right.
Yep.
I want to add one thing here.
Yeah.
One thing I did when I started is, because I wanted to sell this thing, is I actually sent out some free samples of my products to various stores and various people I found online, and that ended up being a good move and ended up paying off a lot.
Yeah, I think there are
people's hands.
Yeah, and I think there are well-known people in this community that are really into this stuff, that are easy to look up and would be happy to accept things too, and test them out for you. Like if I was starting out, just to throw a friendly plug to someone, like I would send something to My Life in Gaming and say, hey, check this out. Like I know those guys would run it through the paces and be interested in it. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, just do the smallest bit of research on who you're sending it to, because just because somebody has, I think My Life in Gaming is the perfect example, because there's a few YouTubers that have more subscribers than them and get more views that are awful, that technically everything they say is wrong. Like, not opinions, not like, well, I think no, wrong. Like,
yeah.
So the My Life in Gaming guys do a great job, and they might not have 1 million subscribers, but they have quality subscribers, and, they might not be able to get to a video about your thing for 6 months because they're so backlogged, but they won't forget about you. So that was a great example, Nick, because there are really good people out there. So just do the slightest bit of research before and send it to the right people, and you'll get a good hit.
I would certainly don't send it to. Never mind. Never mind. I'm just let me just say, there's a lot there are a bunch of YouTube channels, and there's a lot of YouTube personalities that they, for whatever reason, they're on this pedestal where they make these horribly erroneous they say these horribly erroneous things about things. They don't even have the faintest idea of what they're talking about, and it's unfortunate when that happens, and it pisses me off. And it pisses me off because when a prolific YouTuber spouses off a bunch of bullshit, I get like 30 emails the next day about that, and then 2 weeks later, 60 more people have problems because they followed this person's advice. I hate that. I don't know if this video is a part of our quick. Never mind. Okay, I won't say. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, should we move along before Zach gets us all in trouble?
Yeah.
That's too late. We're gonna get letters.
Hello, this is Zach, and this video is a part of our.
I like Zach. Zach's a nice guy.
Thank you. Yeah, I get along with everybody.
That's right.
Renee, you're the one juror that goes and says not guilty in Chrono Trigger. Everybody else is guilty.
All right, so I think we have two kind of bigger topics that we wanted to talk about this round. Do we want to start out by telling Bob why he's a terrible person and we hate him, or do we want to save that for second? I'm up for either one.
I'll jump right into it. I don't mind getting thrown into the fire.
I'd like to say that Bob is a wonderful person.
I already said Zach was a nice person, so I'm done being nice for today.
There you go.
So Bob, give us the background. What did you do yesterday?
I ranted that somebody released a product and it was sold out in like 10 minutes, and it's pissing me off because as not just a nerd who's a fan, I've sold products before, both helping other people out, just kind of on my own, and I see a lot of people do a bunch of things that kind of drive me nuts. And I started, actually, when I recorded that video, I recorded a rant, and then I listened to it, and I deleted it, because I felt it was very unfair for me to just be ranting about this person without them there to defend myself. So I figured, what a better forum than this, so I could fuck with my friends.
Yeah.
And then that way you guys, I won't feel bad because you know my intentions, and you won't feel bad giving it right back to me, so we can have a real talk. And I'd like to quickly go through each one of you guys and just verbally lash every one of you. And I'm going to start with Zach.
Excellent choice, sir.
I actually want to start with Zach because you're mostly off the hook on this one. So correct me if I'm wrong, but basically you have a bunch of RGB boards that you sell. Mm-hmm. You start out by designing one. You make maybe 5-10 prototypes at OSH Park, get them back, solder them, tweak it a little bit here and there, and then occasionally you get to a point where the video is perfect, but you think, well, maybe I could make the board thinner, improve this here or there. So you continue your process of, well, let me make a small amount, sell the extras once I prove that they work right, and go from there. And that, I think it's really just, that's the perfect way to do it. But and there are two things that you could say. One that I don't agree with is that you could say, well, if you know the video is perfect and you're just making minor design tweaks, why don't you make 50 and not 10? But, I mean, we're all only human, right? So what if you get that 50 back and you realize, oh, oops, you made a mistake? You're not going to waste the money. You're not going to sell those. But the one question I do have then is, so I agree with your process and how you do things, and real life gets in the way. You got a family, a real job, we all do. But why would you not, knowing that you have a product that is 99% ready to go, it's working, it's almost at the point where you're going to go send it out for a large amount, so why wouldn't you just open a pre-order? Because what I see happen is, I get a ton of emails like, hey Bob, you did a whole video about Voultar's board, it's never for sale. He'll sell like 2 of them, my friend will get one, now it's gone, screw it, I'm just going to buy that one on eBay. Hey dude, that one on eBay's got the wrong resistors on it. It's kind of not a good idea. Well, screw you. You tell me to buy this thing and it's not available, so I'm just going to go get this one. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the lost money? And then why wouldn't you just throw up a pre-order?
Two things. Now that you're finished. Two things. The first, probably the most important point that I can make in response to that is basically to go fuck yourself. Now, number 2 is, just kidding. The whole process for me is, I designed most of these boards back in September or August, September-ish.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're right 80% of the way. It has been kind of an evolutionary process after taking feedback from people and just revising these designs. But the figure that you threw out, 2 or 3 boards, I'm selling. I try to stock at least 20 boards a week. I try to stock. I mean, I was sick for a couple of weeks and I had some shit happen, and I've not been as available through the tail end of last month or a bit of this month. But I'm not a big company. I'm one dude. Everyone understands that. But it's not like I'm moving super. I'm not selling 2 boards and then I'm going out of stock. I mean, my whole inventory stocking process is going to be much more streamlined, and that's going to change in just a couple of weeks. This won't be as much of a problem anymore. But I have, I've got shit to do. And I'm doing the best I can do, and I try to keep small volumes up there. But as and I put update Twitters up all the time, or updates to Twitter all the time. I mean, if you're following me, I don't see how anybody could miss out on a board. I mean, you might not buy one today, but in 2 or 3 days or 3 or 4 days from now, I'll have another wave of inventory up. They're for the most part there. So that's really all I have to say about that. I mean, I'm going as fast as I can right now, and I think what a lot of people don't understand, and no disrespect to you, Bob, I think this is something that maybe because you don't do it, maybe you just don't see it. The accumulating product and having a good stock is great, but there's another thing that's also very valuable, and that's your time. The time sink into designing all of these boards, the time sink into offering support for all of these different boards, the time sink in working on other things that are totally irrelevant to what I design and sell. My time is very, very stretched, so it's very difficult for somebody like me who has an eclectic mix of obligations to solely focus on just keeping inventory up every 5 seconds. I try to do it every few days, but I don't want to take people's money. I don't believe in a pre-order system, at least not for my business. It's not even a business model. I'm just a hobbyist like anybody else. It's just trying to help people. I don't feel comfortable with taking other people's money for any sort of pre-order unless I can. There are so many radical factors that you have to take into account when you do a pre-order, especially if you're getting these things fabricated by a Chinese fab house, a Chinese fabber. Let's say that I did a pre-order of 400 units. 400 people hand me their money. I do a 400-unit run with PCBWay or some other random PCB assembler and manufacturer. Let's say I get those back, and all 300 of you, there's a small defect in the manufacturing process that basically gives me 300 paperweights. What are you to do then? I mean, these are all risks that people have to take, and you just have to ask yourself in your own business model: is the risk or penalty of something fucking up, is that worth whatever dramatic loss that could be, or is it kosher? Is it better? Is it safer just to go the safer route? Put small volumes up every few days, as you can test them, as you can evaluate them, put them up, and then sell them that way. I mean, that's a question that you're going to have to ask yourself, and quite frankly, I don't think it's anybody's damn business what I choose to do, whether I do a pre-order or where I, masturbate to pictures of myself. That's my business. But all I'm saying is I don't want to take people's money because there are too many radical factors that you don't even think to take into account. I just see that there's such a large margin of error for things to go wrong when you do that.
So we took people's money once. It was called Kickstarter, and it was a miserable time. I mean, of course,
it was horrible.
Probably necessary for us to get off the ground, but we would not want to put ourselves in that position again. It's a burden that you're putting on yourself when you are sitting on all these people's money and you owe them something. And if something goes wrong, you need to be constantly updating people and taking time out of doing things towards getting that product out. Like, you can't just disappear for 6 months, even though some Kickstarter people do. You need to be providing people's updates. So there's that kind of weight that sits on you all the time. And like to Voultar's point about time, when you're in that position, you don't feel like you can ever really enjoy life. Like even for those like couple hours that you want to like sit down and play video games, or you want to take a vacation for a week. I took a 1 week vacation during that whole Kickstarter mess, and every time I was out camping up in the Northeast, and like every time we were driving between places and I could get signal, I was checking emails on my, because we were at that same time we were in the middle of negotiating with the people who produced our board. So it was like super stressful to have that like sitting over your head. From a practical standpoint, pre-orders also mean that you are incurring income before you spend money sometimes. So you get all this cash influx. What happens at the end of the year comes and you haven't spent all that yet? You owe taxes on that even though you're going to spend it later. That is a real cost. And when you're talking about in the U.S., I don't know how it works in Canada for someone like Renee, but as a independent business, you're responsible for paying the full Social Security and Medicare, for instance. So it's a lot higher than taxes than you would be paying earning money through your job. So by the time all that comes through, you've cut your income by quite a bit and could owe a substantial amount of money just because you wanted to get this in early.
So both of you, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I got to play devil's advocate because I wouldn't be doing my job right now if I wasn't. So,
fuck you.
to Zach's point, when you're talking about low cost boards, right? That is exactly what happened to Badass Consoles. There was a bunch of stuff that happened completely out of his hands. And although if he's watching, sorry Michael, but he promised to come on Twitter and update people more often, and he hasn't. And that's really what's been pissing people off. The people that have at least followed him on Twitch and see the process he's going through, understand, and they're just happy they got in line. So, it sucks, but if you ordered 500 of these boards and they all showed up bad, and you were just say, hey, they all showed up bad, it's going to be another 2-month delay. I mean, that's not really the end of the world.
That might be okay at a small number of people, but when you're talking about doing this at scale, at real scale,
what's real scale to you?
Okay, let's just say you have several thousands. Several thousands of people. There's no way that 100% of people are going to be okay with you being like, yeah, I was going to have it in a couple months, but actually it's going to be more like 18.
That's 100% true, but what I'm talking about here is on a much smaller scale. And Zach, you said something like, I don't do this. I think you forget that I did a lot, both in the company that I used to work for, with the G-SCART Switch project, and with those amp and, the Sync and SCART board, all the stuff that I was selling for a while. And I was taking people's money. And I think that if you're uncomfortable taking people's money, you should consider not being part of that part of the business then, because that's exactly what any company does. I mean, do you have any idea what it's like to be in a meeting and then to have somebody, me and my boss walked in and we signed a purchase order for like $25 million, knowing that we're taking this company's money and we're all fucked if we screw this up, and then you spend the next year of your life trying to make that happen. I mean, yeah, that's pressure, but that's how we made a living. And
yeah, but the problem with that, Bob, is you're equating a corporate business market or a corporate business environment to something that's likened to a hobbyist who's just out to make a little profit and to help people.
Yeah, we all have jobs, all 5 of us, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't. I think that's kind of I think you're kind of providing a false equivalency. I don't see it as I don't see what I do. Maybe what Steve and Nick do. That's more in line to that kind of the scope of that may be more in line to sort of a corporate model of big money, big buckets of money going into things for investment or for product return. But for somebody like me, look, I mean, it's kind of a hobbyist thing that I am turning, that I've kind of turned, or that it is evolving into something that might be kind of pseudo lucrative, but ultimately, I don't really think that makes any difference. I don't know. I could go back and forth on this, but
well, one more thing I wanted to say to you though, which I was actually hoping you would mention it, but now I'm flip flopping on the other side of this, I guess. if I were you, my answer to me would have been, I don't, with a real job and other projects and a family, I don't have time to wake up one Saturday and say, hey, all 500 boards are here. I tested 4 or 5 of them. They're all perfect. There's 500 pre-orders. So I'm going to sit here for Saturday morning till Sunday night and bag and tag and visually inspect 500. Like, I don't have the time to do that. But I guess that's a matter of, and that in my opinion is a legitimate excuse. Except, I guess then you decide if you want to try to make this a company or if you want to try to make this a hobby. Because if it's a hobby, there's no reason you should spend one full weekend nonstop just bagging up 500 little boards. And I would agree that let me get them in stock, and that way when people buy them, doing 20 or 30 a day is way easier than 250 twice.
So I mean, the thing that spurred all this is by a guy that's doing it as a hobby, right? I mean, he's not a company.
Right, but Zach's on the path to get bigger volume, always. So that's...
Sure, but you got angry over the guy that's doing it as a hobby, it sounds like.
Yeah, but because I don't know him at all, so that's why I wanted to hash this out with you. Because what if he says, like, I work 90-hour weeks and have 3 kids, I'm doing my best, then I'd be like, oh, shit, I'm sorry, my bad. But if he's saying, no, it's a hobby and I just don't trust anybody else to make them, it's like, there are so many options for you to go send out and have 100 made at a clip for a fraction of the price. And that actually leads me to a question I have for Renee. So, a lot of the things that you make, like, I'm going to use your FM boards as an example. You've talked a lot in public. I'm not telling everybody your trade secret, that you've had a lot of failures on those FM chips. But because you test every single one of them yourself, that never hits the customer. It only hits your shop. So that, if you went out one day and, this was featured on a big video when you got 1,000 pre-orders, the time it would take you to go through those pre-orders, even if you had 1,000 made in one shot and shipped to you, the time it would take to test and then ship each one of those, I mean, your life's over for the next couple of months. So I understand that, but to play devil's advocate, can't you do some kind of build some kind of test bed so that you could have 500 made from China and have them do the testing, and then that way there's still going to be a 2% failure rate, but you don't spend any you rarely spend any time doing it.
2%. Okay. I got a batch right here. Actually, I order like 50 of these every month or so, and the failure rate on these chips is closer to 20%.
Yeah, I have the same problem.
It's huge. These chips, from the looks of it, have been desoldered from various old synthesizers, right? So this is the kind of stock I have to deal with for the YM 2413. I don't have high enough volumes to warrant building a test jig and a test procedure with proper pass-fail parameters and send that to China and pay them the price to evaluate that and train them and so on, and to keep my prices at the same mark, right? It's not worth it for me. So for me, that's part of the excuse why my stock is low. The other one is what you just talked about too, is I purposely keep stock low to a volume that I can manage with the time that I'm willing to dedicate in a particular week. And like you said, I have a job, I have a family, right? I have 2 kids. I like to do stuff outside of this hobby because I don't want it to consume my life, right? So there's a set amount of hours that I'll give to producing and shipping out product per week, and that's it. I'm never going to go above it because I have a nice cushy government job, so I'm going to stay there until I retire.
So aren't there any North American contract turnkey manufacturers that could help with this stuff? Isn't there anybody, that in a world where you don't have to worry about piracy and cloning and stuff, where it's not some dark dungeon in China, like, isn't there people out there to help?
It would cost a lot more to get it done in North America. Some of the quotes that I've gotten from Canadian CMs were contract manufacturers were 3 to 4 times as high as what I'm paying to go to China.
Okay. To add on to Renee's kind of point there from the corporate perspective, the corporate offices of HD Retrovision. the time thing becomes a real issue at scale too. So being out of stock for us is actually quite nice, because the fact that we sold everything we had at one time, and we had, whatever our 30-day period of support, that's all we did for 30 days. Of course our volumes were much higher, but I mean, let's say you have a 1 or 2% failure rate, right? Which is a pretty low failure rate. It's reasonable. It's a lot better than 20%. But if you're doing 5,000 of these things, I mean, let's say you do 5,000 and you have a 2% failure rate. That's 100 emails that you have to keep track of. That is a massive burden. And so over a month, Steve was not doing anything but helping, like, essentially me respond to tickets. So there was no development getting done at HD Retrovision. There was no Dreamcast cables, no work on fixing sync jitter. There was no thinking about HDMizer stuff. None of that. It's just helping people. So being out of stock means we don't even have to answer a single support ticket until we sell something again. And I know when we have our next set of stock up, the next month, forget about it. Nothing's getting done. So there's that time issue. It's also a financial issue too. I mean, like you said in your podcast, you know all about lead times, and for us, they're like on the order of 4-5 months. So you write your big check, and then you get no cash flow for those 5 months. And if we were to order too many, such that we weren't selling out fairly quickly, we'd be waiting, like, let's say it took another 6 months before we potentially even made back all that money if we ordered too many. During all that time, our bank account is at the point where even if we wanted to go and develop something new, we couldn't. So that's another big consideration we have. We have very finite resources still, even though we're doing things at a little larger volume than Renee and Zach. It's not the point where we can just do everything we want to at all times.
I guess I should say, I mean, if you go on my website, it might look like I'm a company, but it would be more accurate to call me a professional hobbyist.
Well, I just want to say that the stuff that I've designed is now, I believe, to the point to where I am personally comfortable with letting some sort of like PCBWay or some Chinese manufacturer to stuff these boards for me. That's not the problem at all. It's just right now, at this time, in the current landscape, the best decision or the best thing that I could have done for myself is to build these myself, debug these myself, and help people on a one-to-one basis for each and every one of these that I sell, just so that I can make unequivocally sure that everything is going well. Now it's to the point to where I can transition to having these stuffed by somebody other than me, and I can test them relatively quickly. But, as far as pre-orders or anything like that goes, at least for the scope of work that I do, I just don't feel comfortable taking with anybody's money, and I would much rather fund it myself than take anybody's money, because I just don't like doing that. It's just, call it whatever you want. I just don't think that's good, because I've seen, especially recently, over these past couple of years, time and time again, projects very similar to this. Pre-orders were taken, no products came around, or the product that came around ultimately was nothing like what was initially supposed to come around the corner. And I don't want to, I don't want to fall into that trap. And that's just, they will be manufactured in higher volume here very soon. But if people don't like that, and if people want to go buy those $15 boards on eBay, listen, they're more than welcome to. I don't care whether you buy my board or you don't. It has nothing to do with that. If you want it, it's there. If you don't want it, or if you don't want to wait, that's fine. You can buy, one of those junkers. But it's not.
But that doesn't piss off every one of you guys when you see these people come up and have their knockoff boards, and they sell them for cheaper, and yours aren't available. So now somebody is having a severely inferior solution because you didn't have stock.
I didn't force their hand to buy that. I didn't force their hand to buy that. That's totally their prerogative. I mean, they have if they want to do that, and if they can't wait a couple of days or whatever. I mean,
even if it's months, have some sense of proportions here. These are 30-year-old consoles that people have had since they were 8. Like, you can wait a little while if it takes some time to get some stock in. I think. I mean, maybe it's an urgent situation sometimes for some people, but I think in general.
I'll be honest with you guys. About a month after I released, most of my boards, they were pretty much carbon copies. People have already ripped off my shit, or they've already started to rip it off. Very similar things that are pretty much what I've designed.
Numbers.
Yeah, they even copied the version number.
I mean, if you're going to rip my board, so be it. But at least change the fucking the solder on the solder mask for one thing. Yeah. I can't do anything about that other than bash them. But and people are like, well, if you do it, I mean, people have said if you do them in mass quantities and you get a high volume of your product, you could afford to drop the price down to where you could compete with the eBay boards that are $14, $15. My boards are every board that I design and provide is less than it's in the $20 range. It's less than $30. That's shipped. If there's no way that I would sell anything that I design for $13 or $14 or $15 or $16 to stay in competition with them, because unlike them, I didn't go to a forum and just rip off a bunch of information and hack my way around in some shitty PCB routing software.
You're also incorporating your support costs into it too.
Well, that is incurred too, but more importantly, it's the time I spent designing these things. I'm the one that sat behind a scope. I'm the one that checked all these plots. I'm the one that did all these elaborate measurements. That's what you're paying for, something that's been thoroughly and adequately done. And I don't care if I got 1,000 volume run. There's no way in hell I would sell what I make for $14 or $15. And if I would stop doing this altogether if I was going to go to all of this trouble doing this and sell them for $13 or $14. That's just the way it is for me.
Well, the point that you just made is exactly what I always talk to people about, and the reason I recommend you guys' products is because of the amount of work and research that goes into them. You didn't just copy something and make it out. I always crack up when people talk about the Retrovision cables, and they say, "Well, it's just an RGB to component chip and a wire. That's not really impressive. I'll just make my own. Screw those guys." Yeah, right. That is not what that is. Not even.
Yeah, I think Steve was trying to jump in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't said much. I just have like 2 quick points. One is about the pre-orders and the having somebody's money. Like Nick said, we've been in that situation, and it's extremely miserable, especially when you fall behind. One point, because Nick he mentioned it, that once you fall behind, you have to start updating people, and that takes away from your forward progress. The other thing is just that having people's money, when you get to that point and you're late, you feel guilty that every single minute is not spent towards doing something. And so I was in an extremely miserable place during that time where I would not have time to do anything. All my friends would always ask me to do stuff. I was like, okay, sorry, I'm working. Their birthdays would roll around. I'd go to their birthday party, and then I'd leave like really late because I spent extra time because I never had time to hang out with them throughout the year. And then they're like, "Okay, yeah, you going to sleep?" I'm like, "No, I'm up all night working." And then I wake up. I have work the next day. I go there. I try to stay awake at
the Quickie Mart.
Yeah, it's the Homer working at the Quickie Mart. I'm about to go home to relay out this board because I got a deadline. And I have to take a 30-minute nap in the conference room before I can drive home so I don't crash on the way home. It's really that bad. For people like me, and I know Voultar we have a similar mind like this. Like if you don't feel like you're spending every minute doing everything you can, you feel extremely guilty, and it kills you. It's really bad. I never want to be put in that situation again. That's just my perspective on it. The other point I wanted to make was Renee about the building a test fixture and training and writing documentation. That took us about at least 5 months, maybe 6 months to do that. It's very, very complicated, and there's a lot of iterations of it, and especially with analog, it's extremely difficult to do right. I don't know. That's all I really
Yeah, so
academic.
to even justify something like that, you have to be producing a very large quantity. Like Renee said, I mean, he made that point is he's not doing high enough volumes to justify putting in 5 months to perfect a test fixture to make his life easier. Totally understandable.
I have one more thing to add too. I want to address a comment by Friction Pin on YouTube. You said there's a big disconnect here, and when we're talking about with regards to a project that is ongoing revision changes versus a finished product. And I like that comment because I think it addresses my reality a lot. Is I have a few projects that I feel are finished, and I'm not going to touch them again. And there's some other stuff that is in higher demand from me, like the graphics booster, that is still a dynamic product. Right, I'm changing stuff on the circuit every time I order a new board. So I'm not really comfortable in ordering a large amount, right? Putting that, there's a risk every time you make a rev change, right? So I want to order a small amount and get it tested. Like even the last revision that came in about a month ago, right? It had a mistake, and I had ordered 100 of them, right? So I had to sit here in front of this bench for, it took me almost 14 hours, right? To change the oscillator on every single board because I made a mistake. Right, so there's when your product is not mature, it's really hard to order a whole bunch of them, take that risk, and stock a lot of product.
That's what happened with us too.
Well, it's really a question of it's a question of resources to demand. I mean, how willing are you to gamble the resources, however little or large they are, whatever you have, how willing are you to gamble those and bet on technology that you're developing right now and where it currently is, and even where all those other radical factors that come into play. And for me, it's just like it's that's not very healthy, because then I become a slave to that, and I don't have any control. So if things go awry, ultimately I'm the person that has to pay very dearly for it. So I try to keep 20 or 30 volume every couple a month or more or less than that, and that's changing. There's going to be a lot more volume here, but again, we don't need, or it's not fair to make the correlation with corporate with a corporate model for somebody who's sitting in their garage and just trying to make really cool stuff when they're not even there yet. I just don't think that's. I think that's a total false equivalency, and I just don't think that's fair to compare to liken the two like that. That's just my opinion. I mean, this is a friendly talk. It's just my opinion.
Bob, I'll show you. There's
sorry,
25 graphics boosters in here.
Less than once. You can retest those.
Sorry, there's 24 now. But I need to change the resistor on all of them, right? So, again, my point exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
Just last point. The reason why we're making this stuff is because we really like doing it. I mean, if it was for financial reasons, I mean, I could walk down the street to Shure. They make audio equipment. They're right here, and get like a job for $100K and not have to deal with this nonsense. Now I'm losing money, but at least I'm making something I like. And so, I mean, I want to. I don't know. That's just. I'm doing the best I can because I like doing this stuff, and I like making stuff for people.
That's a very good point, Steve. We do this because we like it, and like you said, I even had a really good job in Ottawa making electronics that was going to the military, and I felt bad every single day going into work. I actually quit that job, and like I said, I have a nice cushy government job now, which allows me time to design retro gaming stuff. So.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I'm glad you guys said it, but I think it's pretty obvious that nobody here in this podcast does what we do for money. I mean, you could literally take the hours that we spent, and we could go work at McDonald's and make a lot more money than we have. So I think that, I'm glad you mentioned it, but I don't think that needs much more explanation because we already know. But somebody on Twitch just posted something, and it's, I respect everything that you guys said, and I agree with everything you guys said, but B-Trim just said, it sounds ideally like there would be something in between where you could pre-order without paying and get 24 hours to confirm the order once it goes in stock. Kind of like, what's it? Is it the Amazon model? Where when you buy something, you don't get charged for it unless it's in?
Yeah, that is how Amazon works for pre-orders. You don't get actually charged until it ships to you.
And while I love that, the only two scenarios that I could see is you do your 20, 30, whatever's your, whatever you feel like doing, and then, you just keep shipping them out in order, and then eventually people will get them. Kind of like, it's exactly what the guy, I'm forgetting his name, I'm so sorry, but it's what the guy did with the Atari Lynx ROM carts. And he just, you just add it to his list, and he goes right down. And, you pay when your number comes up, and that's that. I mean, Nick, you had Tri-Celery, there was a couple others, and my only concern with that would be, what if you guys get featured on a big website, and now it's not 100 or 200? What if it's 2,000?
Yeah, I mean, it's logistics. It's what you're willing to put up with. I think that's what it comes down to. If you're willing to deal with that logistical overhead of a waiting list, I mean, more power to you. It just seems like not worth the effort to me. And me and Steve have twice as many people as most of these hobby projects working on it. So, I can't even imagine trying to do that as a single guy, putting a product or two out. That's tough.
Yeah, it's something worth at least noodling, and maybe eventually somebody will come up with a model that's perfect, because it's not a pre-order, you're not paying yet, but it's not a list. You don't have to worry about getting contacted. It's something. It would have to be something in between, but kind of like the Amazons. Can you even sell on Amazon? Would that even?
You
is that
can
even
if
a
you want.
possibility?
It's a lot of money.
But it's a lot. It costs a lot of money.
That's
like
kind of what I figured.
You can forget our current prices; they'd be going up substantially, just to cover the cost of warehousing things with them and their pick and pack fees, and it's all quite a bit higher than what we've worked out on our own. So
we've been through that.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Do we want to go on to the other topic? How do people feel?
I'm just getting started.
Yeah. Okay. This is so the other big thing we wanted to talk about was just kind of the nature of open source generally. There's some specific things that we can get into, but we've really been talking about open source long before some of that stuff happened, and I think a lot of it had to do with Renee going down the road of open sourcing some of his products. So I don't know, maybe Renee can give a little bit of background on open source licensing and how he feels about that whole world.
Well, so the whole point about open source is I will give you my work and the corresponding effort that came into it, with the understanding that you will give me back your improvements and your work to make whatever I built better in the end, right? That's the core essence of open source, right? And then there's where it gets iffy and where people fight a lot, and we saw that last week, right, is what license you pick and how you make stuff available, because the nature, like I said, the nature of open source obviously is to open your source, right? So you have to give your source, and people fight a lot about what source is. It's pretty obvious what source is when you're writing software, but when you're dealing with hardware, there's a big gray zone in there, and open source is really tailored towards software. So there's extra effort that needs to be done when you open source something hardware. Like if you open source a PCB design, for instance, what is the source in the PCB design? It's open for discussion often, and that creates conflict.
Can you talk about your products a little bit for context?
Sure, yeah. All of the firmware that I write for my CPLDs, whether it's on FM power base, whether it's on this region converter that I talked about earlier, is GPL3. It's on GitHub. It's freely available. Only the source code for the firmware is, right? I don't open source the PCB designs. and I'm clear about that, right? And the reason, well, I mean, I sell these, so that's the reason why I'm not open sourcing the boards. But
you don't just sell them. You continue to develop them, improve them, support them.
Yeah.
You have a ton of time and money into this.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, my intent is not, greed and whatnot. My main intent, no, sorry, my main reason for not open sourcing my PCB designs is very simple. Is that I use archaic PCB design software that runs on a Windows XP machine, and I feel like I would be burdening everyone who would try to, to contribute changes back, right? So I'm actually learning how to use KiCad right now, and I've got a few simple PCBs up. Like one of them is a ColecoVision ROM card that's free and open source on my GitHub, and eventually it'll get like that. Like Bob said, right? There's some stuff that I'm making money off of, and I'm continuously changing. So like FMPBC, you're never going to see the PCB board being open source for that. But all of the information needed to build one is online. You can find it either on my website or on SMS Power, so it's not any secret, right? The hardest thing about that product is actually the firmware, and that's open source, so I think I'm being pretty generous right there.
So maybe at a high level, it'd be good to talk about why it's important to even like pick a license as opposed to just throwing your files up on your website and saying this is open source. So that's like I think a super important point to all this. And maybe Steve is gonna jump in.
Yeah, I mean that's what we had to do when we started putting stuff up on the free stuff section on our website. I actually went through a bunch of licenses and read them because my goal with posting stuff there was I wanted to put it in the public domain. I wanted there to be no restrictions. Because a lot of open source licensing requires attribution, and which means that people have to give you credit. I didn't care about that, and you also have to ensure that it stays open source. That's what a lot of open source licenses do. They want it to continue to be open source. They don't want it to be closed off. Someone makes changes and closes it off. I didn't care about any of that, so I found the best license for me. I had a friend that helped me out too, and I picked CC0, which is Creative Commons 0. It's meant for putting stuff into the public domain. And it's important to choose a license because when something is created, the person who created it has an automatic copyright. And so you need to provide the provisions for how other people can use it. I wanted to just put it in the public domain, so CC0 makes it so my copyrighted stuff that made, like cartridge stuff and test software, just anybody can use it without restrictions. I had to go through and figure that out. Like you can't just blatantly do it because then it's not clear when there is some kind of dispute or something like that. That's what we had to do.
Yeah, and so an example of that, if anyone wants to see, you could go to our website and in our free stuff section and download, for instance, all the source code involved in the test software we wrote. And in there, you'll find a license file that spells out exactly this type of information.
I didn't just pick one. I went through and found the right one for us. So
in absence of that, we could have just posted the source code to our website. And then at any point of somebody using that in their own product, potentially gone after them and told them to stop and say, hey, we have copyright on that. Actually, we were just, displaying this on our website for funsies.
Well, that would be a dick move.
Yeah, but no, I'm not saying it isn't. It's just, these I think are important concerns to address.
So can I ask a question then directly to that? So let's say I'm 100% by myself making 3 products, right? And I'm completely done with one of them. I'm bored with it. I think it's completed, and I don't really want to make, sell, or support it anymore. So I put it up and I say this is open source, and I want to make sure that it stays. Anybody who wants to use it and make it can. They could make 1 million of them and make $1 billion of it, or whatever. But if I'm donating that to be open source, it's going to stay open source. And is there a specific license for that? Is that the one you chose, Steve?
No, but Renee knows more about this. I'm gonna.
Yeah, ours is more open than that. Ours people can take and do whatever the heck they want,
including modify it and close it themselves.
Yep.
Yeah, and never re-release it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the distinction you're talking about here, Steve, is whether you have a weak copy left or a strong copy left. And weak copy left is what Steve is talking about, right? So you're putting something in the public domain, and you don't really care what people do with it. You just want it to be open and available to people. A strong copyleft is an example of that would be the GPL version 2 or version 3, right? They mandate a lot of things, right? They're actually pretty severe licenses when it comes to open source, right? There's a lot of things that you have to abide by when you release a product, let's say under GPL version 3. You have to always attribute the creator, right? You have to say, well, this comes from certain stuff. Bob made this originally, right? And then I have a derivative work from Bob. I have to keep the same license or an equivalent, right? Because GPL might release a version 4, version 5, and so on. GPL usually allows you to say, I can use this version and future revisions, because they know that they're not going to release a weaker license in the future. Other things you have to ensure in GPL v3 too is that all the source code for a product needs to be open and editable by the end user. So that means you can't use any closed source libraries along with your product. So you can't, let's say you write this awesome piece of code, but it's depending on a library that you pay for that's closed source. Well, you can't make your product GPL v3 because not 100% of the code is available and editable. So you have to pick a different license in that respect.
But there are licenses that fall under what Bob would want to do, even
absolutely
in those scenarios. There are other, I forget the different.
For hardware, there's MIT and BSD licenses, which are pretty popular. And there's some other, I did this a while ago. I don't remember all of them, but I think Renee knows more.
Yeah, there's a ton of licenses, and you can do a Google search, and they're actually listed in order of how strict they are, right? So you can, and which ones are compatible with which ones, and so on. So it's not terribly hard to pick a license, but you can't just simply make a product on GitHub and select GPL3 because it's right on top, right? GPL3 could be a good license for you, but it's not the best license in every case.
It actually does sound a little bit complicated because, I mean, I'm sorry to contradict, but I mean, I imagine there's lots of times you'd get through a project and not even realize, like, oh yeah, that software that I use, it had Java in the in the build or something, it's something strange. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's the one that we discovered this week, right? I'm not going to mention anything about the name of the product or anything, but it's using a specific license, but it's linked with closed IP from a company, right? So the license is actually invalid for that product because it's using GPL v3, but the IP is closed. So you can't build 100% of this product with 100% open source code.
So binary blob is the name for it. It's like, oh, you can't do it. It's a binary blob, and that's just the piece of hardware is running with some built firmware that you have no access to the source. There's a lot of problems with that, I think, with Raspberry Pi, where the GPU is a binary blob, and therefore I don't think it's fully open source, or it's not under GPL3 or something like that. I don't know the details.
Yeah, if my understanding is if you're using a blob, it's definitely not allowed under GPL v3.
Right.
This is such a touchy subject because anytime I've started this conversation, people immediately jump into, well, why are you looking for something for free? That has never and will never be the topic of any open source conversation that any of the five of us are ever involved in, where we all feel too strongly about this crap. I think a lot of it is people's, I hate to say ignorance because it sounds like such a dirty word, but I think it is truly just people's ignorance of it. And I just, I like stuff like this, and I also like it because my opinion, I see Badass Consoles was posting, he and I both agree that my personal opinion, which is not shared by you guys, is that if you make a product and you support it, and you're still working on it and you sell it, unless you're asking for help, it should stay closed source until you're completely done with it. But a lot of people don't act that way. A lot of people would rather, like Renee, you have your source, your firmware is open sourced, and you don't mind sharing. And if people were to ask you, well, what license is this under? What can I do with it? You know a lot about open source, so you're not going to get offended and defensive. You're going to say, here's my license, here's what you can do with it. But it's just really hard to have these conversations with people sometimes because they just immediately assume that you're messing with them, and it's never the case with us, at least.
The problem is that people assume open source, like you said, equals free stuff. Open source is not free as in free beer, as as the nice proverb, or I know it's not a proverb, but sorry, my French is coming out here. It's free as in free speech, right? I want my ideas to be available to everyone. I want, if someone looks at my firmware and says, "Oh, that's stupid, you can do it this way," well, that's a compliment to me, because someone actually took the time to review my code and said, "Hey, you can do this better." I'm going to enjoy that.
Right, so someone in the comments just, I don't know if you wrote this to prove my point or something, but they said open sourcing is essentially donating, shouldn't guilt someone into doing it. Where did that come from?
Well,
this is exactly like that thread on Shmups. No one here in this conversation has ever and will ever guilt anybody into doing any of that. We're just having the conversation about it. So
I think, my point's really quick. My concern specifically is if somebody's going to tell me that something is open source, I want to know the license because I want to understand what my legal obligations are. Exactly. It has nothing that I'm not forcing someone or ever telling somebody you really should open source every piece of your project. I would never go to Renee and say, Renee, it's bullshit that you're open sourcing your firmware and not the rest of your product. You really should do that. I don't care. It's his choice. Do whatever you want. But if he's going to open source it, I want to know what things I have to follow as a part of that. If I'm going to take Renee's board and do my own thing, maybe I don't re-release that back to the public. I want to know if I have to. Maybe I just want to take, if it's under the right license, maybe I could just go sell my own variant of it, and all is well. But if his license says I can't do that, I certainly want to know that, so he doesn't come after me at some point when he starts seeing my boards popping up on eBay and competing with his.
But you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful of how you probe and you phrase that inquiry, because if you do that, like I did, there's a product that I inquired about on a very popular thread forum, Shmups, and I asked a very simple question for clarity: what license is this insert product name under? And I was immediately ostracized for someone's given enough free stuff, someone's being generous enough as it is. Wasn't the point of my question. My question was asked because I want to know if this is really open source, what can I do with it to play around and to contribute to that particular project. And it was just like this line of ambiguity was just being straddled, and nobody for months would give me a definitive answer. And I thought that was very strange. So that to me is just irritating. I mean, if something is open source and you're going to say something is open source, just be very blunt about it and, have very clear terms, because just calling something open source without any of the prerequisites for it to be constituted as such is it causes a lot of problems, and it makes people ask a lot of questions, just like what happened in that particular instance. And it causes a huge dramatical thing that shouldn't even exist, because it's really simple, and a lot of people that don't understand it, they want to jump into those conversations and they want to start a fight. Mm-hmm. And that just annoys the shit out of me.
Yeah, and it's funny because the developer had no ill intentions whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
Entire thing.
And neither did any of us that were curious about the answer to this.
No, the funny
I
part
mean-
is during that whole exchange, I was emailing with the developer, so it's funny how people thought that we were ganging up and trash talking and bullying when it was like.
Well, I mean, I'm sure he knows that wasn't the case, right? I mean,
He does. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So,
I mean, it seemed from his responses that, I mean, he understood what we were getting at.
Totally,
I mean,
yeah.
I say we as I think only you and Voultar were posting on that thread, or maybe Renee was too. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Was there ever, this guy asked, was there ever an answer? Yes, I think there was an answer to that ultimately, but it's still it's still kind of a mystery to me.
Was
That whole-
the answer was there was no license?
Yeah.
No, it was. I thought it was GPL V3.
Yeah, V3.
That was known. That was the software.
That's
Right.
the
There
firmware.
was software and there was hardware, and the software was GPL v3.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the hardware
and
piece.
Hardware was.
The
yeah.
hardware said
Exactly.
there's no license. You could do anything you want with it.
Which
Well,
means
but
it's
then-
under copyright, and you really
Right,
can't.
right.
Yeah. See, it would need to be released like Steve did for someone to actually do anything they want with it in the future. But because there's no license attached, it's still very ambiguous.
It's funny. I kept telling him to close source it. He worked his butt off on it. I hope he makes a lot of money on it. But he was being genuine. He really just wanted to share it with everybody. So just in a different way. So hey, whatever. I guess that was the only thing I was pressuring. But whatever.
Well, I think
it's really important to note that I'm a big proponent of open source, but we're not going out there forcing anyone to release any of their source code or whatnot, right? You can do what the hell you want with your project. It's just about being clear with your intent if you do release something in the public domain. That's the clarity I'm looking for.
Well, when you and poor Bob in that thread, Bob, you took a good beating in there.
Yeah. I don't care.
I mean, they really ran into you, and I'm like,
I wasn't
really,
backing down from anybody.
Well, it started to piss me off because it's like, it's just, that's the problem with forums. You have a bunch of people there, and maybe about 20% of them really know what the hell you're even talking about, and they just create these horrible misinformation things, and it's just, it was really simple questions. Nobody bashed anybody. Nobody was, people were being critical over a few things, but nobody was disparaging anybody or, making any sort of wild accusations or anything like that. It was just a really simple question, and the fact that you really can't provide a definitive answer to that question, that's even more unsettling to me because I just don't understand it. I just don't understand any of that at this point.
Yeah, and you don't want to go put in a whole bunch of work only to find out that you're potentially
in
doing
violation,
something that this guy doesn't want you to be doing.
right? And I would never do that. So
Well, but that's the thing is that none of us here would. The thought of, we're getting sued is the last thing on our minds. The thought would be, shit, I just wasted 40 hours and I'm accidentally stealing somebody's work. I never wanted to do that. I wish I'd have known in the first place that I wasn't allowed to be doing this. I'm not a thief. I don't want to, that's kind of the issue in that as well. But and we keep using this as an example because it's fresh in our minds and because it get heated and because then the trolls won at the end. I fell victim. I thought they were serious and they were just trolling. But it's, because that one was fresh in our minds, that's what we're talking about. But this could be applied to anything. Badass Consoles just posted something. I actually laughed out loud when I read it. The one of their LG's Blu-ray drives is a Blu-ray player from 2008, and the manual indicates that the source code is available upon request. If you call LG to get the source code, they will flat out refuse it or not know or act like they don't know what you're talking about. So it's like, why would you say that? Why would you post it? I'd rather.
Well, they have to under they're probably using some sort of GPL license and they have to say that. But then the problem is they didn't train anybody probably to actually follow through on it.
Probably, but Nintendo did that in the NES Classic. They posted right in the in the credits there. They posted all of the open source licenses they used with that thing.
Yeah, anything using the Linux kernel, which most of these things are. Linux kernel is GPL v2, right? So that's a strong copyleft. So they've got to stick with the requirements.
A lot of your modems and
GPL v2.
routers too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just, I'm probably a lot of this stuff I'm going to open source. A lot of these older designs, like this N64 board, with the built-in, it's got an LM1881 on there that'll attenuate the TTL C-Sync down. I got rid of that ignorant thing, and we've got logic level C-Sync on all N64, so that's gone. A lot of this old stuff, I'll probably I'm really thinking about just offering the PCBs or the board files so people can do whatever they want to them. But I man, fuck me running.
Well, I do have an opinion, and I don't want to, whenever you're done with a project, right? Whether it's because you're bored with it, or whether it's because you're too busy with something else, or whether it's because you get on a spaceship and fly to Mars and you're gone forever. Whatever it is, nobody's going to work on one project forever. So I do always think that when you're done with something or getting ready to be done, just have your don't let it get lost to time. How many things have we probably lost because somebody got divorced and the other spouse threw out all their stuff and they never talked to him again, and now there's 10 amazing designs for stuff that people would have to reverse engineer. Like actually, a great example is everything out of Sega in the 90s. They lost all of the documentation to that, and if somebody had the foresight to go, this might be really important 30 years from now. People might really still be into this and want to make stuff after the because when the patent is over, at that point might as well just release it. And no one did. They all lost all the documentation. So anybody who's working on a big project, even if you have absolutely no intention of ever open sourcing it, at some point in your life you're going to be done with it, whether you like it or not. Strongly consider getting ready to just say, okay, when I'm done, here you go. Or giving it to your friend who will keep it alive for longer or something, whatever.
And what's kind of interesting about that, Sega, or at least Sonic Team, Sega has been really receptive these past couple of years to like the Sega, the Sonic, like Genesis ROM hacking, like all those Sonic ROM hacking. They are very receptive to that, and they're totally cool with that, and they love that. Matter of fact, a couple of people who made a really nice Sonic 1 ROM hack, they have made the next official 2D Sonic game.
They hired Christian Whitehead, who ended up working on a Sonic hack, who then did the translations of 1, 2, and CD to modern format, and he did an amazing job. Yeah, and now Christian Whitehead's on one of the main team guys making Sonic Mania. So it's kind of cool. They embraced their fans. Because at the end of the day, if you spend hundreds of hours doing a fan hack of a game you love, I mean, legally speaking, you're a thief, but the reality is you love it. You love it. And Nintendo treats people like that as thieves. And Sega went, screw it, that's a good idea. Come on board, we need you. So
that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different company philosophy, but I mean, I'm certainly not one that faults Nintendo for that really, as much as other people seem to think Nintendo's this great Satan that just enjoys squashing this stuff. I think they are just legitimately trying to protect their IP, because if you don't defend it, you're implicitly giving it up.
Let me explain something to you, son. My child. Let me explain something to you. Let me be very clear about this. Absolutely, they're within their, and I totally support them protecting and securing their intellectual property. But when you go to the point of flagging fucking YouTube videos,
that's a different story.
From Mario Kart.
Mario
World. If someone's doing
a from, dude, I thought you were from Kentucky. Was that what they say down there?
Yeah, I mean the YouTube stuff is a whole different ballgame. I don't understand that, but
no, it's not though. It's intellectual property. That's it's you're not hacking up software, but you're distributing something in some respect, in some way, through a digital through video. So it is and it isn't in the same ballgame, in my opinion, because it all comes back to that IP, right? IP man.
Right. So for games like another Metroid 2 remake, if he had just called it a different name and didn't say Samus and didn't say Metroid, do you think they would have still gone after him?
I mean, depending on sprites. I mean, if it was just a Metroidvania style game with some character that didn't look like Samus, probably not. But
they didn't go
that area of law is kind of fuzzy. I mean, it wouldn't have to be a Samus sprite, from what I understand, for Nintendo to go after them necessarily.
Yeah. That's what I heard
There's
too.
there's other things that could trigger a case, but I mean that's a we'd have to bring real lawyers in here to hash that stuff out.
I played all the Phoenix Wright games. I'm ready.
Well, cool. I think it's a pretty good discussion. Is there anything else that people want to talk about?
Anyone in the comments there? Let me bring up my Twitter and Twitch here.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe we can take a few questions. So, Bob, I'll just point out that whenever I close up shop, I'll give you all my designs.
I wouldn't know what to do with them. I'm not smart enough.
You gotta put that in legal writing.
Oh,
Wrap it up.
I wanted to show everybody before. I was going to take some nice macro shots of this, but the PC Engine, the Duo RGB board has been redesigned totally. I've omitted the 1881, and we are buffering C-Sync through the 2-gain amp here. That's 75 ohm friendly right off the output. There's no manipulation of that. But the revision has changed. I don't know if this is showing up, but that is version 0.69, motherfuckers. Copy it all day. All day, bitches.
Hey, hold on, Zach. Hold it a little bit back so the people on eBay who steal it can get a good look at it. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Now, board layout is very pertinent here, so be sure you copy that.
And show us the bottom layer.
You filthy bastards, you. There you go.
There, now they can copy it.
You should have made a 4-layer board and hid all like really good stuff in the middle layers, and when you copy it, they'll just copy the.
There's nothing on the top and bottom layers.
I'll just use I'd use like the top for power and the bottom layer for ground, and have all the good stuff in the middle.
You should have made one board, just one, that was kind of sort of similar, but had all the traces wrong, and use that as the picture on your website and put really detailed high-res pictures. So when you start to see those popped up on eBay, we can all have a good laugh.
So actually, I bought this. I don't know where it is. It's a one of those rechargeable USB batteries that you'd normally use as like a second booster for your phone, but I'm using it to make the Raspberry Pi portable. Steve and I were looking like at the marketing nonsense for this product before I bought it, and they give a whole bunch of terms of how advanced their circuitry is, and then we kind of zoomed in on their graphical team's depiction of the circuit that's inside this thing, and like they got all these components that with traces that don't connect up. I mean, it's just a total mess. Like it was awesome. Just components that don't even make sense on there. It was just really funny to see the interpretation of what was going on in there.
Advanced charging circuitry and this is stuff that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Jeez. We got a question for you, Renee. Badass Consoles asked, have you ever thought of a CD replacement for the TurboGrafx 16?
That's top secret.
Okay.
Can we talk
I have.
about why? Oh, sorry. I thought we were... Are you answering it or no?
Well, I mean...
It's closed source.
Okay.
No. If I'm going to do that, that's going to be totally open source. I think... Okay, let's talk about it. I'm looking into if that's not if that's possible or not, if that's feasible within my time that I'm willing to dedicate. If I am going to build that, I'm going to make strong hardware and then release it as open source firmware and hope that people will help to contribute to make it a good product. That would be my philosophy if I were to move forward. I haven't drawn up any schematics. Like, I'm not even close to having something ready for that, but that would be my strategy. Is I would want the firmware to be open 100% from day one. And the PCB, I don't know. I'm still on the fence about that.
You're learning KiCad right now.
I am. It was definitely done in KiCad, but whether it goes in my Bitbucket or my GitHub, that's a totally different story.
How dare you not make it open source, Renee? What is wrong with you?
Yeah, we also get to choose the licensing terms too. So
Right.
Deal with it.
I was going to say, and this is something that maybe Steve could. I know Steve was wanting to talk about this a while ago because we were talking about it. A lot of people, I've been getting a lot of messages, or not a lot of messages, but I've had a few messages come across, like on my Twitter. And Bob and I have kind of engaged in conversation about this on Shmups Forum, about why I have chosen to put a toggle just a jumper you can short. It doesn't have to be like, it's just a jumper that you short for a low pass filtering, an enable or disable for that on boards that employ like a 7374. Steve, would you like to talk about for just like a couple of minutes aliasing with digital equipment?
I'd love to talk about it, but that's a quite a topic right there.
You can't condense that down to 3 minutes, you bastard.
I can try, and
you will do it.
We can discuss it at another time in detail. I love talking about that stuff, but basically, a lot of these old consoles had a frequency content way beyond the normal standard def frequency range, which is 6.75 megahertz, and in an totally analog system, like feeding it directly into a TV. If there's anything beyond that, then it's dependent on the CRT drawings and the horizontal line count, the TV lines. Depends how much frequency it can draw. When you're doing something digital, when it's getting sampled at the standard def sampling rate, which is 13.5 megahertz, then anything beyond 6.75 turns into noise. And even if it's like detail that makes your CRT look better, there's like detail at 7, 8, 9, 10 megahertz that makes your CRT look awesome. If that stuff's there and you sample it, it turns into destructive noise in the digital version. And so therefore you need to implement an anti-aliasing filter to filter out these components so they don't alias back in. That's why it's called aliasing, because if it turns into frequency components that aren't supposed to be there. And so there's a lot of equipment that, it's the equipment dependent. If it has a bad filter before it digitizes, then you can get this noise. If it doesn't, or if it already has like a great filter in there, then you don't need your own external filter to filter out this extra frequency content. So So like you said, you put a toggle on there. In most cases, especially in North America, where we only use a couple devices like OSSC, FrameMeister, maybe some other stuff that digitizes, those already have their own filters in. So you leave the filter off. For anything else, there could be like TVs in Europe that are still sold with SCART inputs. You don't know how good of a filter is. Sometimes these guys make a mistake and they put a higher frequency filter and lets all this junk pass through.
Right.
In that case, you would want to have that filter enabled. I mean, you won't know until you do it and you probably see.
So if you have a television, like a television, for example, it may have the filtering might be for higher bandwidth video. So it doesn't have that low order cutoff. So that's an instance where you don't know. But Badass Consoles just asked, he said, about the toggle, it would require switch, which requires a new hole drilled into the console. While that's a great feature, have you ever thought of a different implementation? It doesn't require switch. As a matter of fact, like I said earlier, it's a jumper. You could wire switch to it, but the design and the footprint there was never any intention of someone actually adding like a single pole double throw or a single pole single throw or an on switch to it. By default, the filter's off. Like if you buy a board from me, the filter, the low order filter bypass is it's already shorted. So the filter by default is off. You don't have to do anything. If you have a piece of equipment and if like you're the 0.02%, that you have a piece of equipment that doesn't low pass the video properly, or if it treats the video as a higher bandwidth video like component or something that's higher definition, then you can go in there and you can just change. You can just short. You can just open up the jumper or change the jumper with just a solder bridge. That's all it is. It's just a solder jumper.
Yeah, it's meant to be a strap option. It's supposed to be like a permanent.
It is
option. It's not meant to be switched on the fly.
Yeah, I think that's what he was getting at, and I think it's that you don't. It's not something you need to toggle on and off all the time. It's not like a color palette switch in NES where you're going to constantly change to your liking. It's if your equipment for whatever reason, if your setup doesn't have any filter, you turn it on. Digital equipment, all analog, this doesn't matter anyway, like RGB monitors and stuff. But if it's, if it were a situation where it was something like, like the palette switch, you could always try to add some logic in there and solder pins to like the controller port to toggle it that way. But with something like this, it's my opinion that people are either going to always leave it on or always turn it off, with the exception of, oh, hey, I just bought a new device that has a filter. All right, let me take the 2 minutes to go, reset the jumper over to the other way. So.
Well, yeah, it's just a solder strap is all it is, and it's off by default. So unless you have problems, you can go in there and you can change the bridge position or the solder positioning.
Mm-hmm.
But it's off by default, and there should be no reason. 99.999% of cases, you'll never even have to fool with that, especially if you're chaining it to an OSSC or to a FrameMeister. Some capture cards, though, they don't. You'll want the low. The capture cards are the big thing, and you'll definitely want the low order filter on the 7374 on. Otherwise, you are going to get that vertical banding and that aliasing. The higher, you're going to get all those higher frequencies in there.
It's not low order. It's high order low pass filter.
Yeah, high order low pass in my butt.
I can put up a great example on the screen real quick for what that looks like. I have it right here. There were some exceptions that this would definitely go for further discussion. Like Leon found a few scenarios which he was double checking. We're still not sure, but so this is definitely to be revisited. But for the most people in most cases, we'll consider this finished. But for anybody watching, I guess I screwed up. I didn't realize that the proper way to describe this is aliasing. Sorry, so I guess I got to change my thing on the forum, but. To me, it looks like weird, uneven jail bars. It's the best way I could describe it. But
it's just the word aliasing is like its root is from this signal processing stuff where you have frequencies that are beyond your sample rate, and they masquerade as lower frequencies and they're aliases. And you get the same effect when most people think about aliasing. They think about jagged edges on 3D polygon stuff. It's the same effect. You're doing an interpolation and you're moving these frequency components around, and you're trying to avoid these high frequency components from going down into your low band, and it's an alias. It's the same type of thing, but we typically don't think of it like that. But that's
I'd like to really quick and just, for any non-engineering people who are listening right now, we're talking about aliasing, and what it means essentially is if you're trying to capture or you're accidentally capturing a frequency that's not there. And a real world example that's extremely easy to understand is picture if you were to snap a picture of the sky every 23 hours, and you would incorrectly deduce that the sun travels from west to east because you're sampling at every 23 hours, right? So that's what aliasing does.
Yep,
that's
a really good example.
Yeah, it makes the day cycle seem like it's going in reverse if you're doing that.
Gotcha.
That's my 2 cents. Sorry.
That's really good.
Really awesome. Yeah.
Well, cool. Anything else in the Twitch that you wanted to get to? I'm kind of looking at the YouTube mostly.
No, a bunch of cool
YouTube's
questions.
Happy that we're doing engineering talk now.
So we can give it a
few minutes here. Let's see what people have to say.
In the meantime,
what were you guys drinking? I was drinking Coke Life and Caleb's Cola. I was going all cola.
Blue Moon Honey Wheat for me.
Bourbon and bitters.
Go ahead. Kissmeyer Nordic Pale Ale from Van Cleek Hill Brewery in Ontario.
I'm the only adult here, huh?
Yeah.
Cola.
There's a guy who emailed me. I was going to talk to you guys about this 2 days ago. He has a FrameMeister, and the only system that he's ever had hooked up to it is a Super Nintendo, and he believes that the TTLC sync has killed his FrameMeister. and he's going to send it to me, and I'm going to be evaluating that thing.
Oh, to
And
be
that's-
continued for
Whoa.
next,
Yeah.
next
Whoa.
time.
Oh, look at this! Look at this! It's a tease for next time.
Oh,
So
very
that's
well done.
something for you guys to be excited for. Me and my bikini. Ooh.
All right, I think that's a podcast. I think we're gonna have to
Yeah.
on that one.
Here,
One thing I wanted to make sure to tell people this time is, like, if you like this, make sure to subscribe, so that in case you miss it on Twitter or Facebook, you'll at least get the notification that we're going live. And I think, like I said last time, we planning to do this like once a month. We're probably going to stick to around mid-month, but depending on people's schedules, we'll do another one in April, I guess.
So since I don't have any internet social media access, I'm gonna do this part. So Bob, where's the best place people can find you or reach you, or website, or
RetroRGB.com is my website. I'm on all the social medias, but I'm not really active on them. I try to respond, but I'm not Mr. Post 20, and I don't respond to Facebook messaging that often. Sorry, guys. So website, email, and I guess Twitter and Facebook.
Voultar, best place people to find you?
You can find me on the Twitter. That's you can find me. My username is sexytimesally327. My website is I like men a lot more than you do.com. I have all my products there that are readily available. Voultar.com. Twitter handle is Voltaire's Mod Shop. Feel free to add me and ask me questions and to hang out with me, because I like to be friends with everybody, because everyone knows.
And because you're lonely.
Because I get along with everybody and I'm everyone's friend. And
He always says it
Bob-
wrong. It's a Voultar_mod shop on Twitter. Okay, Renee, what about you?
Website is db-electronics.ca. Best place to reach me is on Twitter, which is db_electronics. I'm also on Facebook, but I like to think Facebook's a lot more personal, so don't message me on Facebook. I hate it.
And we're me and Steve are on HD Retrovision for both Facebook and Twitter.
Not
If
me.
you
are.
yeah, I handle it.
On the
Facebook, Facebook if you want important updates sparingly. Twitter if you want to get spammed with various retweets.
If you want to get a hold of Steve, you got to send up smoke signals in the Chicago area because his flip phone won't get a tweet.
Oh, yeah.
That's
I got a
right.
telegraph now. I've upgraded.
Oh, I almost forgot. I have to do one thing. We have this logo that's right under me, I think, right? Retro Roundtable.
Yeah.
That was designed by my good friend Stephen Cameron from Cameron Graphics. He asked me to please say that he designed our logo.
Yeah, and if you go to the RetroRoundtable.com, which is where I'm kind of aggregating the stream and the links to the iTunes and Google Play, where you can get all this stuff. His thing will be right at the top under the logo if you want to go check out his website. It's right up there.
And if anybody out there who has any experience with logo stuff, I do, but I really don't have the time and want to help me. I have a beautiful logo right now in a beautiful font, but I'd kind of like to update that. So if anybody out there is willing to help me out with a sexy logo, I would contact me. I'd be really appreciative of your body.
No lowercase, right?
No
Not all
lowercase.
All right.
That's a podcast, right?
Yeah. Till next month.
We'll see you guys next time. Take care, guys.
See ya.
Later.